You should. Yes. Yes, because yes, I saw I found something on the net, so I managed to find a solution. Yes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful book launch. My name is Sapha Burnell. I'm the author of 3 books for Vraeyda Literary: Usurper Kings, Son of Abel, and Neon Lieben. And today we have the wonderful, amazing, and talented Sacha Rosel to celebrate the launch of My Heart is the Tempest. Now, My Heart is the Tempest is the latest publication from Vraeyda Literary. It is a dark fantasy we'll get into a little bit in just a second. We want to say that Vraeyda Literary is a Canadian small press dedicated to speculative fiction to combat apathy and reignite the search for beauty with a pugilistic and often emotional bent. Sci-fi poetry and memoir published in Canada. Pick up your shield and sword and book to save the world. Or in this case, we are using the wonderful powers of female energies and incredible. I love My Heart is the Tempest prose. It's so poetic. It is in and of itself a form of magic. So we are going to enjoy that very much in a minute. So a little bit about Sacha before we move on here. Sacha Rosel has a summa cum laude degree in foreign languages and literature, majoring in English, and a master's degree in Oriental languages and civilizations, majoring in Chinese. Writing her final graduation theses on restoration playwright and writer Aphra Behn, and on 5 Chinese women writers from the modern era, that is 1927 through 1949. She has been writing for more than 20 years, mainly using her mother tongue, Italian. Previous projects include a horror fantastical novel inspired by Chinese culture and a lyrical dystopian novel combining mystical Taoism and post-structuralist feminist theories. She has worked as an English to Italian fiction translator for World of Warcraft: The War of the Ancients trilogy by Richard Knack, and taught English for the last 15 years. Hello, Sacha. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're so glad. Now, I'm just going to do a quick check because things like this do happen. People on Twitch, people on YouTube, I am assuming you can hear both of us. Otherwise, you're just seeing a bunch of talking heads doing this. So please let me know. There we go. All right. We're good. We are good. Okay. So, a little bit about My Heart is the Tempest. We're going to do this. The way that we're going to do this book launch is we are going to talk a little bit about My Heart is the Tempest, about the Tempest Trilogy, and then we will be releasing it off to Sacha to give us a fantastic reading or two with a Q&A. So if at any point in time you want to ask Sacha a question, please 100% do so. You can comment in the YouTube chat, you can comment in the Twitch chat, or you can hit us up on Twitter. We are using Twitter right now. We have the phone right there, so you can ask us questions anywhere there. If you are on the Discord server, you can also ask questions via Discord. We love questions. Questions are awesome. Please keep them on topic to My Heart is the Tempest and to the wonderful breadth of fantasy literature. Alrighty, so inspired by Shakespeare's The Tempest, and including direct citations from the play, My Heart is the Tempest is a dark reimagining of witch Sycorax, here portrayed as a 12-year-old olive-skinned, black-haired human girl trapped in a land of cruel, insect-like albino creatures who worship light and snow, loathing everything deviating from their personal truth, including her, deemed to be a threat to their infallible world. After unconsciously awakening her grandmother Miranda to life, Sycorax slowly comes to realize that the land she has always yearned for actually existed in the past, before being erased from everybody's memory. Now, thanks to Miranda's help, Sycorax can make that land erupt again, but she will have to learn how to welcome darkness first. With an accessible but richly visual and lyrical style, My Heart is the Tempest is a dark tale of self-discovery focusing on an anti-heroine figure learning how to face a world of light made of terror and violence and embracing her hidden powers, thus becoming a conscious instrument of darkness. The novella is also meant to be the first of a dark fantasy trilogy, each volume representing a different stage of life, from teenage years, Volume 1, to adulthood, Volume 2, and old age, Volume 3, focusing on the themes of rage, vengeance, forgiveness, and reconciliation. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind My Heart is the Tempest and what you were really thinking about when you were writing this first volume of the Tempest Trilogy?
Okay, so the book obviously was inspired by Shakespeare's The Tempest, like you've just said, um, and from my love for Shakespeare and this play in particular. Um, the Tempest has been a favorite of mine since I was 16, and um, it was a little bit strange because back then I remember uh, most of my peers at school, because we studied The Tempest and also Macbeth and other Shakespearean works at school when I was a teenager. Most of my peers loved other things by Shakespeare. They usually loved Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth itself, while I preferred The Tempest, which was about an old man, and I sort of identified with him, even if I was very young back then. Um, so both Prospero and Sycorax um, fascinated me when I was very young. I liked the idea of a witch on the one hand, and of a mage and a sorcerer and a book lover on the other, using their magic to enchant other people, possibly manipulate them, and using their powers in an island which was devoid of people and devoid of um, opponents and of people who could oppose their power, apart from each other, of course, because they are enemies. And I also love the idea that um, uh, there was this woman, but sadly, I was really, back then when I was 16, I didn't really realize that she was an absent figure. Uh, but when I was at university, uh, so later on in my life, I studied The Tempest once again, and I realized that it was also um, a book on an erased woman, and her figure wasn't there actually, precisely to legitimize a man's figure and his power. So I wanted to explore this. I've always had this idea in my mind that one day I would um, pay a tribute to this work because of my love for that. And also, I incorporated my experience as a teenage girl bullied by her peers inside the story. And so I consciously try to combine these two things. So my love for The Tempest on the one hand, and my experience as a girl who was bullied um, into the story, into the book, and I just wanted to see where this could lead me.
Lots of powerful sentiments to unpack in that. My Heart is the Tempest is the kind of book that I know when I got to read it, not only just the poetic nature of the prose hit me like a ton of bricks, but the sheer amount of emotion and the sheer amount of attention paid to what historically have been invisible figures. And hi, Dazzly Cat, how are you? Welcome. I hope you're having a good day. If you have any questions for Sacha, let us know, and we will get to those questions too after the reading. Hello. Saying hello to everybody on Twitch. Thank you guys for being here. You guys, every single one of you rocks. So thanks for being around. And I know too, when we're dealing with things of such a personal nature, and when we're dealing with things of such a historically invisible nature, going the fantasy route, bringing in magic, bringing in myth, kind of detaching it in a way from our modern experience is often the best possible way that we have to play around with those themes without people getting their backs instantly kind of gripped against a wall. And two, I just love the color, the use of color, the use of temperature, the use of just the physical world build that you put around it is such a fascinating place. Niveal is such an incredibly fascinating place. And my thoughts on My Heart is a Tempest, I'm just going to do a short little, this is a review thing that I put on Goodreads and the Story Graph and different places like that. But an imaginative and fanciful read, which breaks expectation by the way pre-adolescent Sycorax defies the cultural expectation of her fictitious world. Sacha Rosel creates a new mythology based on the essences of Western and Eastern traditions, with frigid creatures so alien and others utterly human, but intrinsically fascinating. Release expectation when reading My Heart is the Tempest. No oracle can dictate what to expect. Tempest is both coming of age and the ending of one, a thorough beginning to a trilogy which can only be formally understood once all three pieces are in their place. While we don't have parts 2 or 3 yet, Rosel's gorgeous prose keeps me waiting for Sycorax's next journey, a brilliant and sometimes arresting origin for the adult who never gave up on fantasy with depth. So, now, it was impossible to know where the manuscript was going to go. And for those of you who are part of the Twitch community who are watching right now, you know that when we're doing a lot of reader review critique, oftentimes things like plot points and stuff, you can kind of see a lot of where a manuscript can go based on the themes, based on the genre, things like that. It is impossible to know where My Heart is the Tempest is going to go when you first start reading it. It is such a unique structure that it just blows the mind. And it blows the mind in its beauty too, and just in the incredible nature of Sacha's prose. It is itself poetry while being a novel. I absolutely love it. So now we're going to move the floor over to our wonderful Sacha Rosel, author of My Heart is the Tempest, published by Vraeyda Literary. And just so you guys know today, also, we want to make sure that everybody knows if you purchase My Heart is the Tempest via VraeydaLiterary.ca, I will put the link in the description, then you will also be getting a signed sticker from Sacha. You will also be getting, a little bit of merch, bookmark, art cards, things like that. And what we're doing right now is every purchase made from Vraeyda Literary, we are donating partial proceeds to some charities that are helping refugee relief in the world. So that is something we are able to do if you purchase it from VraeydaMedia.ca. But of course, it is also available at your local bookstore. It's also available at Barnes & Noble's, Waterston, Saxo. It is available at Mighty Ape, lots of places. Go to VraeydaMedia.ca to see all of those wonderful places that you can purchase a book. And if you are on our YouTube live stream right now, then all of those links are down in the description box below. It's for our Twitch streamers that I might need to add a few more links. But there we go. So now, with that caveat, with that kind of moment under the way, it is time to release to Sacha. Go for it.
Yes. So I will read an excerpt from the book. It's the opening of the book. She was a furious rage walking. Wherever Sycorax went, a flaring wind moved along with her, some obscure energy steaming off her whole body. Not the jolly frozen wind Niveal inhabitants were accustomed to, but different and disturbing, something which surely was malignant. It had to be, for it was as hot as the strange airs and fires mentioned in tales of imaginary places, fabrications of the mind where alien shades spelled crimson and coal, haunted people with their scourge, and snow and ice didn't exist. Her lesson clarity was all to see in the real world. One never found anything but ice, snow, and rocks, layer upon layer, in a mirror like truth. Since the beginning of time, when the Lady of Snow, Nive, was impregnated with white flakes by strikes of thunder and lightning, giving birth to the first immaculate beings, life was pure whiteness, shining endlessly. Their appearance proved it. White crystal pupils, snow icy hair, alabaster skin, proudly boasting translucent butterfly wings once pupated into adulthood. All the rightful children of Niveal were born of snow and ice, and relished in cold. No anomaly could live and prosper in the frozen truth. Yet there she was, this odd valley of moss girl boiling all over, forcing an evil hot wind of weird tales into their lives. She had to be sick. She was sick, sick without remedy. Sicko, they called her, spitting the word out with utter precision, as if to wipe clean the shadow she cast on their path while walking. Outsiders, those dark haired Valley of Moss descendants were unmistakably barbarians. Intruders, creeping their way through the snowy crevices of the mountains, engulfing the sacred land in their steps made of tar. One day, they would certainly be forced to leave and disappear in the black chasms of the unknown. As supreme rulers of Niveal, the Council of the Bride eventually accepted their presence among the children of Nive, alas, because servants were needed to keep the land spotless. Naturally, those Valley of Moss frauds were the perfect candidates for such a heavy task, looking as strange as they did. Their olive-skinned figures might spoil the view while crossing gates and bridges or walking through the temple of perennial breeze and pristine pool. But it was a small price to pay to make sure all corners of Niveal looked perfectly immaculate at all times. Though no Nivelian would treat those oddities as equals, everybody kindly embraced the council's order and accepted the inferior beings as their guests, for the newcomer's fate could one day be changed into banishment, and more importantly, none of them would show any sign of rebellion. So, this sicko girl could walk as furiously as she thought fit. She was not yet 13 and still ignorant of the world. They could tolerate her strange ways, for they knew perfectly well she wouldn't last much longer, behaving in an erratic and untamed way. Soon, she would bow down and accept the supremacy of Niveal laws. There was no other way to survive. Soon, All the words spitting from their mouths would cause her to break, spilling that ghastly wind out of her body and out of their precious land. Her steam would evaporate and vanish like a dying breath, replaced by this safe and solid sound of snow. Or so Cleo hoped. He saw her entering the main hall of the Temple of Bright Eyes, long hair as wild as swarms of flaming creatures, her eyes as cursed as dark stars. Everything about her was wrong. Her looks and voice too rough, skin too dark, cloak too coarse, for it was made of wool, the fabric used by the Valley of Moss barbarians as they could not endure the purity of cold. And that warfare walk of hers was wrong and outrageous, surrounded by a mysterious coal like aura. Even as the moment of humiliation approached, as it happened every day in that same classroom, she showed no sign of reaction to the violence to come. Of course, she could not venture to respond in any way, for retribution would be merciless. Making an example of those who questioned Niveal's rulers was the main pillar of civilization. Silence was the only choice available to anyone who contradicted the council's law. Yet the girl's indifference troubled him. His wavy short hair as restless with doubts as his mind. The more he invented new schemes to torment her, the more her orbit would drift further, like a planet clad in a halo of black mist. Didn't she know he was the son of Estin, the most powerful lord of Niveal, thus the future ruler of the land? Wasn't his word the only legitimate echo of Neville's will in the classroom? The only voice young Pupe acknowledged as their own, like others followed his father's? The Temple of Bright Eyes was his to command. No alien creature could escape their truth. As soon as she entered the classroom, Cleo summoned his most faithful assistants, twins Clint and Macklin, to put an end to her savage walk. Rising from their desks with tyrannous frivolity, for their love gains more than any riches their master could possibly own, the brothers advanced towards the insignificant outsider in poised, arrogant steps. Their long, flamboyant, snow icy air danced in the air like daggers, ferocity growing wilder in the eyes. The other children cringed in awe and fear of their coming. Despite Cleo being responsible for imposing the right penance on each underage transgressor of Niveal laws, no retribution could take place without the twins, for their faith in the sanctity of cold was universally recognized to be the most authentic illustration of what the typical creature of bright had to be: pristine towards fellow citizens who respected Neve's way, and unforgiving towards those who did not. Certainly, such an oddity as that raven haired Valley of Moscow deserved all the punishments she received, for there was no other way to instill truth in rebels. Once again, as it happened every day, the children lowered their heads in silence and dread as the two hounds of violence walked in perfect harmony. Eager to please their master, they immediately grabbed the savage girl by her wrists, relishing in the promise of brutality Leo's unusual order would surely bring. Spitting on the psycho girl or lacerating her skin with daggers was their customary way to deal with her evil presence. Wouldn't it be nice to enjoy a diversion for once? She didn't seem to react nor move in any way, yet the steam she was made of grew louder, infuriating in the air, like a dark corona devouring everything around her, including her jailer's exuberant disposition. Despite their merry thirst for blood, both Clint and Nacklin looked genuinely repelled by the direct contact with the girl. Touching her obviously felt like contamination, as it left them exposed to her revolting coal like force. Who would want their diaphanous clarity to be sullied by that vile creature, even if it was Lord Eston's son to say so? All their ascetic like dedication to torture seemed to vanish. Disappointment deepening in his soul, Cleo felt his mind slit open, delirious with impatience. The twins would get the punishment they deserved later. Now he had to stop the outsider himself to show he would repel her fury at all costs. Moving closer, he raised his slender face until his eyes met hers. They looked like two unpolished black obsidians, dense with the color of night, crude and impossible in all that purity of light Niveal was made of. Such eyes were too fierce to be acceptable, too intense to be stopped, but stop them he would. He was horrified at how Nive would allow such reversal of beauty to exist. Dark hair, black pupils, thick dark eyebrows, and olive skin too. She was far too different to be trusted. All descendants from the Valley of Moss, destroyed by the mighty wind of Niveal many centuries before, were not to be trusted. She was nothing but a stain in the perfect holiness of Niveal, and stains had to be wiped out to keep the land clean. His white crystal eyes still fixed on hers, once again he felt his mind bustling with painful noises, widening like deep howls beyond his ears, piercing through the eyes of his fortitude as if to break the whole world open. Not once did the girl avert her gaze, nor did she falter. Yet her countenance curiously seemed to change as he grew nearer, a silent grimace slowly rising from her lips, rage radiating liquid through her eyes and almost scratching his wavy hair with their bare touch. Her whole figure looked like a bruise against the immaculate sky of Niveal, blistering with evil. She seemed to be waiting for some unknown force to come and erase everything, shattering snow and its white halo forever. For a split second, he felt helpless and defeated, no longer the mighty Cleo, son of Eston, but some weak creature nobody could ever admire or worship. Savagely, hoping to hide the sense of powerlessness breathing in his brain, he lifted his hand and briskly slapped the awful girl, knowing that sole gesture would suffice to reaffirm his power. His palm felt charred and almost crumbled to dust for touching her fiery skin. But the slight ache he felt was of no consequence. She didn't flinch nor blink, her eyes tracing the path to the abyss widening in his soul. But he managed to chase the night stain away. No fear would warp his mind. Wasn't he the strongest young creature of all Niveal, the only one who could lead the way? No one could disobey him, nor refute his decisions, not his fellow creatures of pride, nor that dark monstrosity. His mind filled with pride, Cleo view rose to the girl's ears, and, careful not to touch her again, hissed, "And you twisted psycho." Then he spat on her Medusa hair, motioning the twins to follow his example, which they gladly did, their eyes gleaming with euphoria before noticing Lord Kirilla approach from the corridor.
I would clap, but it would be really loud. It would just be like boom in the middle of the microphone. That was chapter 1 of My Heart is the Tempest. So incredible lyrical style. incredible amount of that sort of just beautiful poeticism that I find in a lot of your work. I'm so thrilled. And Dasley Cat says very cool. And guys, we're going to take a short 1 minute break just to allow you guys to kind of think up some questions for Sacha. So we will be back in about a minute 10 seconds. And hopefully we will have some questions, some Q&A for Sacha Rosel. Anything from her writing process, influences, you name it, anything about the book. So see you in a moment.
Mm.
And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for that short little break. We have returned. So, who is first up? We've got Dasley Cat with the question, how did the idea for the book begin?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. How did the idea for this book begin?
Okay, the idea began when the first sentence popped in my head. She was a furious rage walking. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it came from. And it kept running through my head. I think it was in 2014 when this sentence first popped into my head. And at first, I didn't know what to do with it. And I kept thinking and thinking. And then I said to myself, please don't overthink it, because sooner or later you realize what this sentence is and where it might lead you. And after a while, I realized it was this teenage girl talking. I didn't know it was Sycorax yet, but after a while, after a few months, I realized it was indeed Sycorax, my own version of Sycorax, of course, because um, in the end, it hasn't much to do with what Shakespeare says in his play, because, of course, they are two different characters. And so that's where the idea came from. And I think one thing I might add is also that at the time, um, I was at odds with um, the place I live in, uh, because I kind of felt it wasn't a very nice place to live in, and I kind of incorporated this into the story, um, creating a world where this girl who was full of rage might feel at odds with. And so after a while, I realized that this place might be the opposite of what this girl might be or might feel like belonging to. Um, so that's how Niveal came to be. I
Yeah.
hope I answered you.
think that was a pretty good answer on that one. Now, we are going to wait for another question. In waiting for another question too, that is very neat. Dazzly Cat says that is very neat. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to make sure, there we go, I can see everything. Now, what do you want readers to feel at the end of My Heart is the Tempest? What message do you want the reader to take with them?
Um, okay. Okay, I'd like the readers to feel different kind of things after the book has ended. First of all, a sense of release, a sense of hope, but also a sense of disquiet and possibly dread for what is yet to come. Because don't forget that this is a dark fantasy. So please bear in mind that there are many dark things, and the story in book one, but also in the following books, might really go into very dark places. So um, uh, I might say, in a way, there are even multiple endings to this story in book one, because there is not one ending only, in my view. And one of the things that happens in the end might be seen as shocking, but it wasn't my intention to shock anyone or to create something that might cause controversy or shock or something similar. Um, it's only that my aim when I write is to be truthful to my characters. And if a character is like in this book, an anti heroine and a dark heroine, and also the other characters, most of them are dark people and anti heroes and heroines. Um, Somehow things might get disturbing or difficult, and so I'd like people to feel a combination of all these things. So hope, release, empowerment, um, but also darkness in a way, because it is a dark fantasy.
Yeah, now we have another question. So, yeah, it's here, hold on just a second. It is an interesting way to kind of look at dark fantasy in that respect. And to see this book, the way that we kind of want to frame our emotions when we're reading My Heart is a Tempest, within that lens of two, this is one ending, but it's one of three as well. It's a trilogy, and I think that's going to be incredible to see. Like, I don't know what's going to happen later on, and I want to. I, I very much want to see what's happening later on. Now, we have another question. Did you do a lot of world building in your notes, or is the world building entirely in the book?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Because again, it's difficult to hear sometimes.
Okay.
The voice comes and goes.
Did you do the world? So, did you do a lot of the world building in your notes, or is the world building entirely in the book?
No, the world building is definitely not entirely inside this book. More is to come. Um, I mean, this might sound like either a huge reveal or as a very strange thing, but more will come about this entire world, not just in the trilogy, but also in the prequels, because there will also be some prequels about the story of Niveal. Um, so yeah, I have lots of notes concerning uh, the universe of the Niveal universe and the Tempest universe, and both of them, how they might uh, either overlap or uh, uh, clash against each other, or a combination of both. So yeah, there are many notes, and what you see here inside this first story is just, I wouldn't say the beginning because it's something in the middle of the whole universe I'm creating. So uh, you might say it's the tip of the iceberg, but it's not even that. It is something, yeah, kind of, yeah, multiplying and scattering in all directions. So it's, yeah, uh, still, there's still a lot to come, both towards the future of Niveal and the story of the trilogy, and in the past. So moving forward, but also moving backward.
And again, I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of Niveal and more of what happens with the different world that has been built, because it is so incredibly different from anything that we would be able to go out there and see. And we have another question. Why/how did you decide on an anti-hero model?
Okay, because I find them more interesting than heroes or heroines. Um, okay, when I write, I I wouldn't define myself as a specific kind of genre writer, because what I write usually is a combination of different things. So uh, be it sci-fi or fantasy, like in this case, um, uh, they always, or even literary fiction in a way. But what I write is always a combination of poetry, uh, horror, and dark patterns and dark tropes. So um, yeah, I mean, it comes natural to me to think about anti-heroes and anti-heroines, just because what I write tends to be very dark. Um, Probably, I wouldn't say horror specifically, but horror, definitely horrorful and containing dark elements. Um, because it's what I find the most fascinating to write about, to explore the dark sides of people and their flaws, uh, together with their qualities or their uh, powers and their illuminating sides in a way. Because darkness and exploring, uh, I wouldn't say villains or villain like characters, but exploring the dark side of characters is what makes you, as a writer, I know this is what makes me as a writer um, click and tick at the same time, and kind of want to know more about that character. And it allows me to deal with the writing process in a more profound way, so that I can dig for diamonds. Of course, I have to dig in the dirt, so roll in the mud constantly, and it can be painful, hurtful, um, difficult, maddening most of the times, but it's really rewarding because you manage to explore uh, different facets and multifaceted um, dimensions within that same character. So um, um, it was a natural decision because I wouldn't side with somebody who is without flaws or without any uh, dark or vulnerable sides. Because I mean, even in real life, I wouldn't trust people who seem too kind and always smiling and never saying something unpleasant. And I know as a person I'm quite dark, and uh, I think I've learned how to negotiate with my own darkness and how to explore my own darkness. And so it's something which I find really personal when I write. So this book is both an experiment, but also something really, really personal, because it is an exploration of darkness, which is, um, I'd say, something I've always felt uh, to be uh, the truest and the most authentic side of me and of myself as a writer and as an artist.
So, continuing on with what we were just speaking of, continuing on with that idea of the character and their darkness, who was your favorite character to write?
Okay, apart from Sycorax, of course, because she's the protagonist and everything started from her. My favorite character to write was Einstein, um, who I pronounce that way because I'm the author, and I decided that the pronunciation was Aston instead of Einstein, because I didn't want his name to sound like a scientist. Um, I find him the most fascinating character after Sycorax, um, and the easiest one to write about, paradoxically. Uh, the parts involving Anston didn't need any polishing, or almost any polishing in the end. So it's like he came out of my guts and my nerves, um, all in one piece. So that while writing him, I really knew how to relate to his feelings. Um, he's an extremely flawed character and a conflicting character. So he what he feels constantly clashes with what his role is and what his duty is supposed to be and what other people expect of him. And so um, he's a coward, he's weak, and he's constantly doubting himself, doubting his feelings, both past and present, and also doubting his own decisions and his role as the leader of the Council of the Bright and the ruler as the ruler of Niveal. And and I also loved writing about exploring and discovering his relationship with his past friends, who are also happen to be Sycorax's parents. And I found their relationship really fascinating. But okay, no big reveal here again. But later on, when I land my trilogy, when I'll go back to Niveal's past, uh, we'll discover something about him, which will be rather shocking. And so you will see um, his whole personality and his whole relationship to other people, and especially to his own past and to his friends, in a completely different angle. And it will be it will be shocking, I guess. So pay attention to this character, because yeah, he will come back, and you'll discover new things about him in the future.
We have a congratulations. We have a congratulations, Sacha, on your new book by Marisa Ribeiro. Thank you, Marisa. Oh, as I knock my microphone. And Angstaze is asking via Twitch. Pardon me, I don't know why my audio is garbling, but Angstaze is asking, I noticed that most of the first chapter seemed to be looking at the main character rather than looking as the main character. Is that narrative choice maintained throughout? If not, how easy was it to transition into the main character's point of view? Also, Angstase also commented that sometimes characters just, they up and shove you out of the way and declare, I'll write this part. So when you were talking about, I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation of Ice. How did you say Einstein again? Eston. There we go. Eston. I'm going to be one of those people who's like, Eston. Eston, Eston's name. So when you were talking about Eston being a fairly easy character to write, Angstase said some characters do that. They just shove you out of the way and declare, I'll write this part. So, yeah. But yeah, how easy was it for you to transition point of view within My Heart is the Tempest? And a big congratulations and thank you to Marisa for coming. Hello.
From their perfect land of made of white, um, which is of course a metaphor because these people. Um, the idea is that these people seem human, but the more we read, we go on with the reading, the more we realize that they are in fact not human. And so my concern was to focus on their point of view first, and then to move on to Sycorax's point of view. And the shift wasn't that difficult as maybe some other shifts may may be later on in the book, or might have been while creating the contrast or the fight between one character and the other. So in this case, the shift wasn't that difficult because I knew that we would move on. We would move from the general choral view of Nivealians to Sycorax's point of view, which is a solitary um, individual and lonely point of view. So the whole first chapter, the whole chapter one is structured that way. Whereas in some other cases, it might have been more difficult. Even if I think that the most difficult thing about the story wasn't really shifting from one point of view to another, but probably uh, pinning down the exact nature of the twisted relationship between one character and the other. In some cases, that was indeed difficult, but in some others, it wasn't.
And Marisa is asking if what. Pardon me. I'm sorry, my audio is garbling. I think it's because I'm turning off my mic and turning it back on again. There's relations between your book and Shakespeare's Tempest, and I know we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, that there is that relationship between Shakespeare's Tempest and My Heart is the Tempest. Is there anything you want to elaborate with when it comes to that incredible relationship between the play and this dark fantasy interpretation, this dark fantasy kind of expression?
Okay, without saying too much about books 2 and 3, because of course many things that are in Shakespeare's The Tempest will need exploring in books 2 and books 3. So as for the first volume, so My Heart is the Tempest, um, I would say that uh, the relationship, that the connection with Shakespeare's play, apart from the presence of magic, of course, uh, was this idea of um, an extremely powerful woman who was also a witch, who uh, whose presence was erased in order for uh, the owner, let's say the owner of the island, to um, do what he does and become who he becomes. And taking inspiration from this, so having this on my mind, clear inside my head, uh, I kept thinking about how uh, this woman could revenge herself because of this erasure, and how her rage could empower her to leave her mark into the world. So I think the main connection between the two works might consist of this, might be this in volume 1. Apart from, of course, the citations from the play, which I mean, maybe some of you might be uh, interested or intrigued into finding, because apart from the titles for each chapter, uh, there are many citations inside the book itself, not just the titles, but also other sentences here and there come from Shakespeare's play. And there's also a quote from Macbeth. So you might, I don't know, maybe some of you might have fun in trying to find lines from the Tempest, or this 3 words from the Macbeth.
Now, now we are going to have one more question before we move on to the second reading. And this one is Angst. Were there any things your editor challenged or wanted to change, but that you thought were important to maintain? So this is more of a relationship between your editor and writer kind of question.
No, I wouldn't say change. I mean, my editor didn't ask me to change anything per se. She rather asked me to explore uh, uh, better the relationship between some characters. In particular, she urged me, she invited me into adding some more nuances to the relationship, the dynamics between Cleo and the 2 twins, Flynn and Nacklin. So, in a way, the most difficult scene I had to not write from scratch, but rewrite, because I had to add some more elements, some paragraphs, and some nuances to the scene, is a scene in which Cleo and the 2 twins kind of psychologically torture each other or manipulate each other, so that we no longer understand who's in charge. So Cleo is supposed to be the one in charge, but in a way, they kind of uh, overrule his decisions or something like that. So I think it was the most challenging part of the book. Mm. So my editor, by the way, I want to publicly thank her, Liz Koreniuk-Ratetsak. Um, she was incredible in her work and in helping me understand how to dive through the relationship between these three characters in particular. And we also um, spoke about uh, Sycorax's parents, uh, who were sort of blurred as characters at first, but this wasn't a conscious thing that my editor did herself only. I mean, we discussed about it together, and so we came to the conclusion that some things needed some more exploring on my part. And then there was a final adding, final exploring process, which was completely my decision, but my editor agreed on that. So at some point, I realized that I wanted to add some more nuances to the relationship between Aston and Sycorax's parents, because I felt that something was missing. So I decided to add some more paragraphs and some different things in order to shed more light on their past relationship.
Brilliant. And we got the book that we got. We got My Heart is the Tempest, which is available on paperback, hardcover, and ebook right now. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read My Heart is the Tempest for free. And so basically, with your subscription, because you pay for Kindle Unlimited, hold on, there's the audio again. Because you pay for Kindle Unlimited, you can read My Heart is the Tempest right now. Otherwise, right now, the ebook is an Amazon exclusive, but the paperback and hardcover can be bought all over the world in tons of different places. Just search for Sacha Rosel, or on the YouTube channel. Please look at the description box below for links. And on Twitch, I will put the links once more into the chat. We are going to move right along to the second reading. And then we will have another short period of time for just one or two more questions. And then we are all wonderfully done for today. All right, and Angstaze says, where's Waldo? Nah, where's Shakespeare in Sasha's work? That's, I like it. We'll just have to keep looking out for the Shakespeare. Maybe we'll do a special kind of, maybe we'll do a merch prize for the people that find all of the different quotations and where they're from on the Discords. But yes, all right. So Sasha, I'm turning it back over to you for the second reading. All right.
A shining, wingless, skinny figure glimmered amidst the small icy mulberry trees. The druid was indeed there. He looked younger than one might expect from a 1,000-year-old being, yet as ancient as time itself. A bundle of wrinkles singing on his face through the aeons of life. Amarok was among the tallest men in Niveal, but still Rocco seemed incredibly tall. His sole figure, a white mark impressed into the fabric of light. His eyes, too, seemed to include every detail existing in time, past and present. One glance of his could encompass all the billion stars that ever moved across the sky. Your lord asks for my advice, I gather, the druid said without looking at the messenger. He knew Eston would request a consultation with him only if he deemed it necessary to do so. But he could not allow his hour of free reasoning to be spoiled so easily. I'll meet him here after the donning ceremony ends. He added, his gaze still fixed on the tiny trees forming a net of spiky stars in the garden. Pompous old man, you do not even have wings, and still everyone must worship you as if you were superior to us all. Rocco detected the words forming in the brain of that mortal creature, though the worsening weather conditions made it more difficult for him to discern each sound in its distinct flavor. The warm season was approaching, and the waning of white was too. Summer and its plague of heat would further deteriorate his powers, unfortunately. It was nature's way. He could do nothing but wait for the canker of summer to come, then end, to gain his full powers back. But still, his faculties were much stronger than anything that brainless attendant believed to possess, be it physical strength, courage, or loyalty to his master. No matter how brave and proud mortals might consider themselves, Rocco thought, hearing Eston's servant leave the garden with disdain in his mind. In the end, they all proved to be twitching larvae, praying for the miserable life to rise and shine. His eyes pierced through the frail branches of ice, cutting deep into the star pattern created by the harmony of trees. He couldn't feel any pity for mortals and their little fate. Mind reading wasn't meant to feel compassion. Its purpose was merely to neutralize their possible moves in case they proved dangerous for the survival of the world. Maybe that was precisely what Eston needed of him, to stalk a menace out of the perfect neutrality of white. Because the beast of darkness was emerging again from light, Rocco could see it clearly now. Perhaps it would be as uneventful as it was the last time. That naive Miranda posed no real threat in the end, despite the council's view on her curse of black magic as extremely dangerous. Casting a mighty spell on her mind and body while she was trapped in Niveal's dungeon sufficed. He simply raised his chant to heaven once and exhaled, his breath a tunnel of snow widening in the empty air. A single blow from his mouth was enough to dissipate all threat her trail of darkness might pose. But maybe someone far worse was now emerging from the dark, someone as fierce as the one he destroyed centuries before. Despite time's curve melting all moments into white atoms of known existence in his mind, he could still see the goddess's eyes sometimes. Her black pupils haunted his dreams, their violent fury flowering to the fullest as she tried to rend his wishes into shivering vapors. No council of the bride, nor political hindrance of any kind existed then, he recalled with pleasure. He had all the powers to decide and destroy, concentrated in his hands. Yet, he could not indulge that futile, incomplete remembrance of things past. He needed clarity to conquer all threat with his will. Another impudent creature was arising from the hidden depths of Niveal, its clutches ready to tear the board they peeled so tenaciously apart. Though summer was approaching, he would find a way to strike at its monstrous heart. Somehow, he would gather enough strength to send darkness back to oblivion forever. The Temple of White Triumph's peripheral room was filled with the cold light of early afternoon. All the servants left, so Rocco summoned lower-class pupae to follow him to the rear of the building. The dawning ceremony was about to begin. Though Nivealians could metamorphose in many ways, that particular shedding of skin was the most precious to the future of the land. More than anything, a sort of rebirth. Born with a slight imperfection, extruding viscous threads instead of pure crystalline breath, lower class pupae spent their entire childhood foraging in generous mouthfuls of mulberry pie to make their yarns grow thicker. In so doing, their parents hoped they might one day be chosen as the official weavers of the land, destined to produce fabric without respite during their adult life. As the coming of age approached, all methodically ripped from their families, the Druid consulted the oracle and would decree which ones could be granted the privilege to serve and which would perish instead, their nourishment deemed insufficient to produce high quality fabric. No wonder the wretched creatures considered themselves so special, sacrificing everything in order to perform such pivotal tasks as clothing their fellow citizens. Escaping death turned them into holy manifestations of the glory of Nive. One close to the other, their eyes eagerly watching him with expectancy, the blessed children form perfect white lines of obedient minds and bodies bathed in light. Finally emerged from their larval shells and sanctified by his soothing words, they would do anything for the sake of Niveal. They only waited for him to say the right words to finally become whatever destiny planned. He loved the devoted attention displayed by those eyes, as he loved that careful pacing of silence echoing in the room before the resurgence of sounds in his lips. It almost felt like the whole world was in the palm of his hands once again. Then, his face turning into a mass of bright galaxies, he blew a single breath towards the young creatures. It wasn't words he needed to awaken them with, but a deep vocal sound made of light, a high-pitched signal slowly absorbing their will into one single purpose. As he closed his lips, the note languished in the air, sewing its scent into their very soul. Finally, Rocco saw the first luminous threads run from their mouths. Pure silk, Mandan wool, intricate embroidery, all of them extruding the very fabric Niveal clothes were made of. A smile broadened in his mind. Now he could leave the room and let them shape the weaving of days for the rest of their life.
Intense. Intense is definitely how I would define that one. Especially just that character of Rocco in My Heart is the Tempest and his battles and just, if you want to know what a villain looks like when they think they're righteous, look at Rocco. I cannot wait to see what people think of what happens. Cannot wait. All right. I wanted to remind everyone, too, that I wanted to remind everyone too that My Heart is the Tempest is on Goodreads and thestorygraph.com. So if you have thestorygraph.com or Goodreads, please go on. Click the link either in the description box if you are on YouTube, or if you are on Twitch, I put the link in the chat. Please click Want to Read. Add it to your shelf. Let us know what you thought. Always, every single time somebody clicks Want to Read, adds it to a shelf. Every single time somebody gives a book a rating or leaves a review, it helps that author be found. So, especially, when the reviews are, nice 4 and 5 star reviews, But, all right, so we have time. We have time for 2 more questions.
Okay, I'd like to say something.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, speaking of where to find authors, okay, you can also go on my website, which is Luna Donna, LU1N, okay, LU1NADONNA.net. Okay, Luna Donna. You can go there and okay, most of the site is in English. There's also a part in Italian. You can skip that, and yeah, you can visit, or you can go on my blog, Words, Sounds, and Visions. If you just key Words, Sounds, and Visions, Sacha Rosel, you can find it. Thank you.
Maybe if I turn my mic on again. There we go. That link is now available on the YouTube chat and also in the Twitch chat. So, Sacha, do you have any closing remarks, any words, that anything you want to say that you didn't get the chance to yet? Or is there anything that you want to talk about your wonderful book and about the publication of it and anything like that?
Um, okay, yes, of course, there are many things I could say. Yes, I would also like to talk about the writing process um, because it's really important for me. Um, I find the writing process extremely powerful and energizing, uh, even if it might sound exhausting at times. But I think that writing is the best part of being alive. At least it is for me. So each writing session is a way of excavating uh, for the right uh, parts of the character to emerge, and so therefore their quest to be visible. Uh, and so, in a way, I'm both a vessel for their quest and for their voices to be heard, and also a guide for them and for myself as well, um, through the magic of writing. And I think that despite this is my first book in English, and previously I've always worked in using my mother tongue, which is Italian. Um, I don't think that the writing process has changed for me. What changed is just the language, so the medium I use, and this book is, in a way, is both a tribute to Shakespeare, but also a sort of a tribute to all the writers uh, I've loved throughout my life, and to all the writers and authors who have always inspired me in creating my own voice. So, yeah, among my influences, I would, apart from Shakespeare, I would definitely mention Clarice Lispector, who is my favorite writer of all times, Paul Celan, who is my favorite poet, and I would also mention other writers who have been important for the building of the language in this book in particular, although I wouldn't mention them in general as being uh, my reference points in writing. But I could mention them for this book because they were important for the development of this book. So I will also mention Tristan Tzara and his poems, uh, both in French and in the English translation. Then Seduction of the Minotaur by Anais Nin, which is not an erotica book. I don't really, I'm not really interested in erotica. It's a book about, again, exploring the self, exploring your hidden sides. So the Minotaur is what the protagonist discovers about herself. And I would also mention a very poetical and visionary book by Neil Jordan, who's also a director, called The Dream of a Beast, which is about a man who transforms into a sort of a bird-like creature. And I found this book extremely inspirational for my story. Uh, so I would like to mention it also because of that.
Excellent. Excellent and wonderful. All right. So, do we have any final questions, any final comments from people on Twitch or on YouTube? Just going to wait one more minute and remind everybody that My Heart is the Tempest is now available for sale all across the entire globe in paperback, hardcover, and ebook. The audiobook will be coming and will be coming in the next few months. And for those of you who are able to purchase a paperback or a hardcover copy via vraydamedia.ca, there will be some extra goodies in there. Like, as long as you purchase the book within this month of March that we're in, we will be adding in some wonderful goodies that you will not be able to get. They are exclusive to vraydamedia.ca. And they will include a signed sticker to go in your book that was signed by Sacha Rosel herself. And for those of you on the Discord servers, Sacha is there, so you can talk to her as well. She will be coming back to Twitch and YouTube on March 27th. That is Sunday, March 27th. Sacha will be our special guest for the Magdalene Feast reading series. We are diving into some amazing feminist works and having a wonderful conversation on the 27th. That is the Magdalene Feast reading series on March 27th at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So PDT, because that time change has happened now. So if you want more of Sacha and you have any more questions or anything like that, please join us on the 27th of March for a wonderful and fantastic time. Also, for the Twitch stream people, the people who are looking at this via Twitch, we are doing the 24-hour live stream to raise funds for container shipments of humanitarian supplies this Tuesday on the 22nd. We've got some fantastic special guests that will be showing up to put in their support. And so thank you for joining, even if all you can do is just join and watch for a little while or leave it on in the background. That would everything helps. Every little bit, every single bit of that helps. So thank you guys so much for that. And we might be doing a bit of a giveaway, which would include some Sacha Rosel goodies as well. So we will see. Alrighty, so I think that is the end of our stream. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Sacha's beautiful launch. Thank you so much for being a part of My Heart is the Tempest, and thank you for picking up your copy either via Amazon for the ebook, Kindle Unlimited, paperback or hardcover, wherever paperbacks and hardcovers are sold. I wish we could have actually shown you the physical, actual books, but due to paper shortages, it's been an interesting ride. Right now, the only 2 copies of the actual paper copy of the book that entered the office are being photographed by the Vraeyda media team, and Sacha's copies are on their way. So if you pre-ordered the book, your pre-orders are actually now sending, which is fantastic and incredible news. Things have been a bit crazy around the world. I think that's the euphemism of the last decade. But thankfully, My Heart is the Tempest is a go. And so And it just so happened, like Angstase was mentioning earlier, is there a reason, like, is this a thematic thing that you chose the last day of winter to publish a book like My Heart is the Tempest, which has to do with a teenage girl battling the cold? It's like, wow, that was a consideration. All right. I have been Sapha Burnell, author of 3 books, and on the YouTube, you guys probably don't know, editor of many. But for the Twitch streamers, my name is Sacha Rosel, otherwise Sacha Rosel. Good grief, not enough coffee today. Sapha Burnell. This has been a really interesting thing, with certain people being like, wait, which one are? Wait, so there's Sacha Rosel and Sapha Burnell. Yes. Ooh. Such similar names. It is a wonderful thing that happens. Wonderfully and serendipitous happenings there. So my name is Sapha Burnell, speaking on behalf of Vraeyda Literary, and this has been Sacha Rosel, author of My Heart is the Tempest, and many books. If you are somebody that reads in the Italian language, then there are even more amazing goodies to read of Sacha's works. So any final goodbyes?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, it was a wonderful evening for me, at least. It's evening.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, that's finding the right time when you're across the planet. It's so good morning for those of you in North America by the Pacific Coast. Good evening to those of you who are in Italy and Europe, and good afternoon to everybody in the middle. All right. I hope everybody has a fantastically creative day, and please go out and support Sacha Rosel in her launch of My Heart is the Tempest. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.